Welcome to Joy Recovery Radio. In this space, we talk about betrayal, recovery, and relational harm through the lens of integrity, accountability, and trauma-informed care. Our goal is not to rush healing or prescribe outcomes, but to offer language, clarity, and grounded perspective. This podcast is educational, not therapeutic. You're invited to listen slowly, take what resonates, and leave the rest. Let's begin.
If you've been around betrayal recovery spaces for any length of time, then you've probably heard some version of you both need to work on the relationship now. Or there was a reason that you chose to be with this person and we need to explore what was wrong with your decision making. Or the relationship was broken long before betrayal. And so let's work on the coupleship. Jacqueline and I are not anti-relationship, but we are strongly anti-misdiagnosis. And we see this happening in recovery spaces far too often. When you misdiagnose betrayal as a relationship problem, number one, you're slowing the healing down for the betrayed partner. But not just that, you're often making the trauma actually worse for her. And so the reason that we're recording this episode is because we keep seeing so many well-meaning people, therapists, coaches, pastors, programs, that are unintentionally, accidentally recreating the very harm that they're trying to heal. So today we just have one main thesis. Betrayal is not a relationship problem. It's an integrity problem that has relational consequences. That distinction changes everything. It changes how recovery is structured. It affects who carries the responsibility. And it's why so many partners feel like they're failing at their healing when actually they're just having a normal response to trauma. So you don't need to agree with me yet. You don't need to decide anything today. I ask that you just stay curious and listen with an open mind. Let's slow everything down. Let's slow down enough to get the diagnosis right. If we accomplish that, then this episode was worth it. Let's start with the default frame that most people are given after betrayal. They are told that they need to go to couples therapy. And it makes sense, doesn't it? You need to work on your relationship. We need to work on us. So on the surface, that sounds reasonable, maybe even wise. But here's the problem with that. Relational work rests on assumptions that the betrayal has already destroyed. There are three core assumptions that are part of relationship-based models and relational work. Assumption number one, there's equal power in this coupleship. Assumption number two, they have a shared reality. And assumption number three, there's mutual responsibility for the problems that this couple is facing. These assumptions are perfectly fine and normal and required for couples work. If it's going to be ethical, if it's going to be effective, if it's going to be stabilizing, but not for betrayal. In fact, betrayal removes all three of those assumptions. Assumption number one, equal power. Sure. In a healthy relationship, power may fluctuate, but it's fundamentally shared 50-50. In betrayal, power becomes asymmetrical. There is a gross, abusive power imbalance. One person had access to hidden information. One person had secretive behavior. One person was making unilateral decision-making. And one person had the ability to shape the reality of the other without their knowledge or consent. The other person, the betrayed partner, did not have access to any of these. So that's not a relationship dynamic. That is a power imbalance. When we rush into relational work without addressing that power imbalance, what we're basically saying is, let's go ahead and collaborate and work together, even though only one of you has had access to the truth. That doesn't create safety for the betrayed partner. What it does create is pressure for her to comply with the relational work. The second assumption that we cannot make when it comes to betrayal, as opposed to normal couples counseling, is the assumption that there is a shared reality in this relationship. Relational work assumes that both people are operating from the same basic reality. They may have different interpretations, sure. They may have different emotions, more than likely. But betrayal involves what Dr. Manwala calls IMR, intentionally manipulated reality. The betrayed partner, she wasn't just hurt, she was deceived. She was misled. The partner is not confused about the relationship right now. They're confused about reality. They don't know what was real. They don't know whether their own perceptions can be trusted right now. The third assumption that's not appropriate when it comes to betrayal recovery is the thought of mutual responsibility. This is the most damaging assumption. When it comes to normal relationship models, they emphasize that these two people co-created the problem, that there is shared contribution to the relational problem, and that they both have mutual patterns that need to be addressed. And again, in normal couples counseling and relational work, these concepts are totally appropriate. But when you apply them prematurely after betrayal, they are covertly shifting the responsibility away from the person who caused the harm and onto the person who was injured. So suddenly the betrayed partner is being asked to regulate her emotions, communicate better to the betrayer, and examine their contributions to the relationship problem. And all of this is being asked before integrity has been restored or stabilized. That doesn't bring healing, but it brings trauma and destabilization to the partner. When relational work happens before he has established integrity and a shared reality with her, then there's a few predictable things that are going to occur. Number one, the betrayed partner is going to feel rushed to forgive. She's going to feel pressured to soften her trauma response with him. And number two, her trauma responses themselves get labeled as relationship problems. Number three, his accountability becomes weakened because she's part of the problem. And finally, the relationship becomes the container for recovery, when right now it is the least safe container available. That's why so many betrayed partners will leave therapy thinking, I feel stuck. What am I doing wrong? Why can't I move forward? Or why do I feel worse after a session? They're simply responding to a treatment plan that is out of sequence.
Recovery breaks down when people are pushed into action before they understand the injury. Education has to come before intervention. That's why we created the Joy Recovery Academy. The Academy is our flagship educational space, designed to help you make sense of betrayal trauma, integrity abuse, nervous system responses, and what real recovery sequencing actually looks like, without pressure to fix anything or decide anything yet. This is where clarity replaces confusion, and where you finally get a map before anyone tells you where to go. The Academy includes live teaching twice a week, a growing on-demand library, and hundreds of the same frameworks and tools we use with our private coaching clients. The Academy launches in about 3 weeks from when this episode airs. If this feels like the step you were never given, or if you want clarity before action, go to joy-recovery.com, Click Academy and join the waitlist.
Now, in order for us to understand why betrayal is not a relationship problem, we have to name what was actually injured. It's reality. Betrayal involves sustained deception. When I say deception, I'm not talking about merely telling a lie. I'm talking about IMR, intentional, manipulated reality. When someone maintains a secret sexual basement, a secret sexual life, they're not just withholding information. They are actively shaping what their partner believes, what decisions their partner makes, what risks their partner is being exposed to, all without informed consent of the partner. That's not a relationship problem. That's not a failure to communicate. That is an integrity injury. So here's where things get really critical. When we men manipulate our partner's reality over time, their nervous system is impacted by that. That's why partners often report hypervigilance, nonstop intrusive thoughts, emotions that become flooded, a fragmentation of their memories, and this overall sense that they're going crazy. And then they enter into these recovery spaces that they never dreamed that they would be a part of. And the focus is on the relationship. And her trauma symptoms get treated as if they are obstacles to the relational work. That's why Dr. Manwala added an additional trauma room to his model that he called therapy-induced trauma. Why is that? Because when integrity is not restored first, then the betrayed partner is being asked to emotionally co-regulate with someone who is not safe. And that creates a double bind for her. She's being told, you're allowed to heal, but you need to heal in ways that don't negatively affect the coupleship. And yes, you're encouraged to be honest about your trauma, but only within safe limits so that he doesn't go into shame. And over time, many partners actually start to believe that they are the problem. And they're not. The problem is this: the underlying integrity injury has not been addressed, and it hasn't been resolved. And this is where things can get really confusing, especially in recovery culture. I have a love-hate relationship with recovery culture. There are aspects of it that I admire and I have benefited from. And there are aspects of recovery culture that are dysfunctional and not helpful when it comes to betrayal. In recovery culture, we highly reward any kind of insight. When a betrayer says, I finally have answers, I finally understand why I did this, everyone seems to breathe a collective sigh of relief, because insight feels very encouraging. It feels very hopeful. But insight by itself, it doesn't restore safety. So insight can sound like change, but insight is still keeping the focus on an internal experience, which is often more comfortable for us men than external accountability. Here's the hard truth that you probably don't want to face. Insight can exist, and there still is no behavior change. Insight can coexist with continued abuse and harm. What is needed is accountability, not just insight. And accountability doesn't have the same warm feelings that insight does. It's not flashy. But accountability is consistent honesty. Accountability is being transparent with your partner in a proactive way where she's not pulling things out of you. We're talking about external accountability that doesn't depend upon her. she's not having to monitor you, and she's not having to manage your recovery. Accountability looks like changed behavior that's consistent over both time and stress. So accountability doesn't ask, do you understand? It asks, have you stopped the abuse? Has the harm stopped? And that can feel colder than insight. It's not as emotionally satisfying. But for a traumatized partner, it's the only thing that creates safety. So this is the line that I want you to sit with today. Relationships do not heal betrayal, but integrity does. Relationships can benefit after integrity is established and stabilized, but relationships cannot substitute for your integrity. When we confuse insight with accountability, we reward him for understanding instead of rewarding him for being safe. And safety is the prerequisite before anything relational happens. So if betrayal is not a relationship problem, what does heal it? Well, is she healed because he provides great reassurance? No. Is she healed because he makes grandiose promises? No. Is she healed because there's so much effort going on? He's going to 90 meetings in 90 days, and he's working the steps, and he has a sponsor, and he has a CSAT, and there's all of this activity going on. Does that heal? No. Well, what does heal betrayal? 3 things. And they have to be in this order. This is the work of recovery for men. Think of it as the 3 I's. This is a expansion on the work of Dr. Manwala as he talks about the 3 I's of recovery. And this is our adaptation of that. For our work with men, this is what we focus on in this sequence. It must go in this order, and it's non-negotiable. Integrity, impact, and integration. Let's unpack those one at a time. We're going to do a whole podcast on the 3 I's, but let me just briefly introduce the 3 I's. Number 1, integrity. This is ending the harm. That's the goal. That's where we start. We don't start with relational work. We start with integrity work. We've got to stop the harm. So when I say integrity, I'm not talking about just being more honest going forward. I'm talking about ending all forms of deception. Stopping every expression of intentionally manipulating her reality. Integrity means restoring accurate, real-time, shared reality with your partner. And integrity involves submitting to accountability that is external from the relationship. Integrity stabilizes the environment. And without integrity, everything becomes performative. The second I is impact. The first I, integrity, is stopping the harm. Impact is understanding the harm and attending to the harm. Sometimes it's called mountain work or attending work. Only after integrity is stabilized and the couple is living in shared reality, only then can we men truly face the impact that we've caused on our partners. Impact work is not showing emotion, crying tears, expressing remorse, getting better at making amends or apologizing. When I talk about impact work, I'm talking about being fully present with her and listening and receiving her pain without going into self-reference, without collapsing into shame, without correcting her reality, without avoiding her reality, but facing the impact of what our decisions have caused in our partner, and we keep our focus on her. That we are an empathic witness to her pain. That's impact work. Finally, the third I is integration, and this is dismantling the system that caused the harm in the first place. So integrity, stopping the harm. Impact, understanding the harm and attending to the harm. And then integration, dismantling the system inside of us that caused the harm in the first place. Becoming whole, becoming healthy. Integration is where the integrity that we've been working on becomes integrated into our character. It becomes part of who we are. It passes the test of both time and stress. It's consistent. Our partners can count on it. It's durable. This is where we end all compartmentalization in our life. We dismantle the entitlement, and we now begin to live a values-driven life where our behavior is in alignment with our values even when we're going through stress. So we're talking about men who are becoming honest, loving, and whole. Integrity, impact, and integration. And all this work is being done regardless of the relational outcome. Because there's no guarantee that you can heal your relationship. But the best bet you have at healing your relationship is becoming a man who is honest, loving, and whole. Only after integrity, impact, and integration, the three I's, when those are stable, that's when we do relational work. Because that's when he's ready. That's when the integrity injury has been properly addressed. But even then, it's completely up to the partner and her readiness. Relational work is optional. It has to be based upon her consent and her nervous system readiness for this. She must feel safe in order for relational work to begin. Just because you've gone through the three I's and just because you've reestablished your integrity does not mean that she owes you anything. She doesn't owe you intimacy. You didn't earn a relationship with her through all your effort, but it may organically emerge when she has safety in her environment. So, if you take nothing else from this episode, here's the summary of what we've been talking about. If you're the one who caused the harm, understand insight alone is not enough. You need accountability. And effort is not the same as real change. And the relationship is not the container for your recovery. For the betrayed partners, please understand, you're not the problem. You're not broken. You're not keeping the relationship stuck. You're not failing at your healing. And you don't need to decide today whether you stay in the relationship, whether you leave the relationship, or whether you want to repair the relationship. What you need is truth and safety. What he needs is to provide that for you through his integrity. Clarity will come to you after safety, but not before.
Thank you for listening to Joy Recovery Radio. Healing after betrayal is not about speed, certainty, or outcomes. It begins with clarity, safety, and integrity. If today's episode was helpful, you can find additional educational resources and information about the Joy Recovery Academy and our private coaching at joy-recovery.com. Remember, joy is possible when you live in integrity.